What is going on, guys, and welcome to the Week 4 podcast and the hunt for the Great White Buffalo. We are a fifth of the way through the regular season, guys. The playoffs start Week 15. We are a fifth of the way through it, and we've got one undefeated team and one winless team, but since we are 1/5, 20% through the season, let's take a look at the standings real quick and talk about the points for and see what's going on with these breakdowns and see if we can figure some things out. So no surprise, number one is Pocket Rocket. Looking at the roster, you probably could guess that if you knew a little bit about football. 3-0, 582 points for. That is about 150 more than the next closest team. That is ridiculous, and I think that number is only going to grow unless Julio re-injures his foot or something crazy happens. Antonio Brown did not look good with Michael Vick at quarterback. The other thing about that, though, is Roethlisberger's walking around without a boot. That actually, based on everything that I've heard from the medical researchers on ESPN and stuff, that bodes well for him returning quickly, and that will only boost Pocket Rocket's scoring right back up to what it was. In number 2, moving up 5 in the overall power rankings last week, is Publix Crab Special. They've scored 423. They've actually had more points scored against them. They are negative 26 in points, but they are 2-1, number 2 spot. Number 3, moving up 2 spots, is last year's number 10 team, the Hitmen. They're sitting at 2-1. They have scored 433 points. So yeah, that's kind of where everyone's kind of grouped in at. A couple less, couple more, but everyone's around 415 to about 450 is kind of where everyone's grouped in at. So not too much separation there, except for Yager and Michael. The Sandusky's fall 2 in the overall power rankings. They have scored 418 on the year, but they have the least points against at 339. Turned down for what drops 2 spots after last week and is the last 2-1 team in the league. They have scored 409. They have been outscored by 60 points. They're negative 60 in that breakdown. Now we get into the 4-1-2 teams. Number 6, dropping back 2 spots, is Donde Está La Biblioteca. They've scored 444 and they've had 459 against them. They're sitting at negative 15. Number 7, dropping a spot after last week, is the defending champions, Slap and Pickle. Scored 377. The Dez injury, Luck's not been playing well. There's a lot of things going on with that roster that's really kind of out of his control for right now. This team has only put up 377 against. He's 439's been hung on him. It's kind of right around average based on the league settings. So yeah, roughly 70 points. Probably about 65. Negative 65 there. At number 8, coming off their first win of the season, is Always Late Cromartie. They've scored 439. They've had 410 against them. So 29 plus 29 there. Number 9 is Bout That Action. First win last week. Scored 433, which 220 of it came last week. So really last week really bumped me right back up in there. And I've been outscored by 24 points. So, I mean, that terrible 76-point week was just god-awful. I can't believe that happened. And sitting at the bottom of the board, dropping 2 spots after last week, is the only winless team in the league, PY Can't Handle Me. They've scored 408. They've been outscored by 5. They've been outscored by 92. 500 points against. It's at negative 92 there, and that's where we're sitting right now. With that being said, guys, I guess let's get right into what we're tuning in for, man, and that is the breakdowns of the games this week. In our first matchup of the week, we have the defending champion, Slap and Pickle, playing Pocket Rocket. That's the highest scoring team in the league versus the lowest scoring team in the league. Right now, based on NFL's projections, Slap and Pickle is projected to pull the upset by a slim margin over Pocket Rocket And I'm assuming that's due in large part that Antonio Brown fell so below his projected mark at 11.75, which honestly in the realm of wide receivers is not an awful number. It's just not Antonio Brown-like numbers. So that definitely helps slap and pickle after the Thursday night game. In terms of roster, let's take a look at what Pocket Rocket's got going on. He's got Peyton Manning versus Minnesota. Peyton Manning's arm is not what it used to be, but he's finding ways to get it done. He's still an admirable starter. He's not at the top of the league like he used to be, but you can still throw him in there and be relatively safe. You got Adrian Peterson versus the Broncos defense. That Broncos defense is one of the top-rated defenses in the NFL, but I think, that's based more on turnovers and such. I don't think they're really world beaters. I mean, the Chiefs put up 20-something on them, let that game slip away. The Chiefs should have probably won that game by all accounts. Then you got Alfred Morris, who has been losing touches to Matt Jones over the last couple of weeks. There's a lot of speculation whether the new regime is what's causing Alfred Morris to lose his touches and lose his carries going against Philly. The best thing working in Morris's favor for this weekend is the fact that FedEx Field is going to be a mud pit. I don't think they're going to be doing too much throwing because the receivers won't be able to get too much footing, but we'll see what they can do. We got to remember this is the same turf that ultimately led to RG3 messing his knee up, and several NFL players have said is one of the worst fields in the league when it gets wet. So we'll see what they can do based on all this rain we're going to be getting from the hurricane coming in here. At his first wide receiver position, you got Julio Jones, who's been killing it. The dude is insane. He has just been dominating teams. There's no one that can stop him. There's no one. He's had 141, 135, and 164. His lowest points in our league this year is 28.5. That is ridiculous. It's insane. I can't. There's no wide receiver in football right now that's playing better than Julio Jones. Fact. No one. Anybody in the league will tell you that right now. This guy is playing at a phenomenal level. And this is what the Falcons envisioned when they traded those draft picks for him a couple seasons ago. I mean, he is just blowing people's thoughts away. If he can stay healthy, man, this guy might have one of the greatest seasons in NFL history. Antonio Brown, who obviously to Julio Jones is by far the best wide receiver combo in the league, had a dud with old Michael Vick at quarterback. Vick only threw for 128. 42 of that went to Antonio. Antonio did drop a TD, which would have helped things out a lot for Pocket Rocket, but shoulda, coulda, woulda. He ends with 42 yards and 11 points in fantasy. At tight end, you got Owen Daniels this week trying to go for that double down on the quarterback tight end combo. It can work pretty well. I don't know with Owen Daniels. I think he had his first touchdown of the season last week. Really had been put up. I mean, he still put up pedestrian numbers outside of that touchdown last week. 28 yards and a TD. That's good for 13.8. If he's going to do a similar thing to what Dwayne Allen did last season and just get a touchdown every week, then you can start him. With our league, there's not many tight ends out there that can probably contribute, so you got to roll them out if your top option's gone. Lucky for Slap and Pickle, Rob Gronkowski's on a bye this week, so maybe that will definitely help change things in his favor. Then you got Golden Tate going back to Seattle. Now, this could go one of two ways. Either the Seahawks are going to do everything they can to shut him up and just stop him, or Golden Tate's going to do what Deshaun Jackson does and just go back and just tear it up. But we'll see what he can do with that 12th man. Golden Tate is a guy that kind of seems to thrive on the controversy and stuff, and we'll see what he can do. It might not be a bad flex play, that Monday night game. McManus at kicker, and he's rolling with the Eagles defense versus the Skins. The Eagles are a team that generates turnovers. They're not really that great defensively, but honestly, if the Redskins run the ball, which I'm thinking they might just based on the weather and Kirk Cousins and everything like that, if they pound the ball, I can see this being a bad game for the Eagles defense. Simply with Kirk Cousins is kind of good for at least a pick or two a game. If he's not throwing it as much, they might not get those picks, and that might lead to a bad fantasy day. On the bench, you got LaShawn McCoy sitting out. Decker, who's questionable. Ray Rice is on a permanent bye. LeGarrette Blount and Rob Gronkowski are on weekly buys. But LeGarrette could go yearly bye anytime. Who knows? Josh Gordon is also on a yearly bye. Taliaferro had 4 points. And the Rams defense versus the Cardinals. The Cardinals have been hitting pretty good lately. So I think for the most part, unless there's somebody that really tickles his fancy in free agency or an injury, I think he's going to stay pat with what he's got there. Now, for Slap and Pickle, trying to rebound and get back on the right track and defend this title, keep that Buffalo in his possession. Hashtag bring the Buffalo back to VA. You got Carson Palmer, who's been having a really good season, nice little resurgence. He was having a good one last year before that injury. Yeah, you got to start him over Luck right now, with Luck possibly being out, game time decision. Don't want to roll the dice. He hasn't been that great anyways. The Jacksonville matchup is intriguing. It's definitely probably tempting to throw him out there. I think you got to go with Palmer this week. And it's not like he's got a bad matchup. You can throw the ball in the Rams. Jeremy Hill. Jeez, the Bengals got to figure that out for fantasy owners, right? That is just insane. For a guy that do what he did last year and start week 1 so promising to be getting his carries cut down so much, you got to wonder if it's just the fumbles or what's going on with the carries there. I haven't really been paying too much attention, honestly, to their carry division there, so we'll see. It's just kind of hard to play either one with confidence right now. Carlos Hyde, another guy. After week 1, you thought Michael's running backs were legit. Jeremy Hill and Carlos Hyde, you thought that those future picks were 100% knocked out of the park. That was good. This just goes to show you that football is a weird thing. It changes weekly. That's the best thing about the NFL is you never know what's going to happen, man. Injuries, game planning. Carlos Hyde, if the Niners aren't getting routed, which is a very good possibility against this Green Bay team, because the Niners defense is not good. They lost way too many pieces. The Packers jump out on them early and force the Niners to throw, which is a very good possibility. Carlos Hyde could have another underwhelming day. DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver. DeAndre is one of the most talented wide receivers in the league. I truly believe that. If Malik can get him the ball, then he could do some serious damage. And it seems like they have a decent connection. Starting John Brown at wide receiver. Trying to double down with the quarterback wide receiver stuff. And Brown's been a decent play last couple weeks. Same thing kind of goes for him in terms of the passing game against St. Louis. You can throw the ball on them. Their front seven is good. Their secondary is okay. You can throw on them. Travis Kelce versus Cincinnati. Travis Kelce is a beast. I love this guy. Travis Kelce has seriously become one of my favorite players to watch in the league. He's just awesome. And Alex Smith throws to him a lot. He had 10 targets last week. He had 80 on 6 receptions. A very good day. It's always good when your tight end can get into the double digits and not necessarily need that touchdown. Travis Kelce gives you that every time. And he's a guy that's always looking to make a bigger move and fight for those extra yards, and that's awesome. Michael is determined to get points from the Cincinnati backfield this week, throwing Gio Bernard in the flex position. Definitely work, especially with all the injuries that's been going on to him. A lot of the guys you'd want to throw in the flex are just not available. Joyke Bell, Dez Bryant, Sammy Watkins, Arian Foster. Foster's at game time, but you got to figure they're going to limit those carries, especially after what Alfred Blue did last week. Finally having a decent game after 3 weeks of just nothing. 2 weeks of just nothing. He finally, in the third week, has a decent game after most owners had cut him, including myself, because he's a fucking bum. Now, John Brown, who is the bye-week replacement for Steven Gostkowski. Decent matchup. Brown's been pretty good in terms of kickers. I don't think he's going to make or break the game, but who knows? He could have a Justin Tucker-like game and put up 15, which is definitely a game changer. And the Bengals defense versus Kansas City. The Bengals defense is pretty good. Kansas City's offense is somewhat lackluster. The only thing about Kansas City's offense is they got home run hitters in Jeremy Maclin and Jamal Charles, and Travis Kelce could always just throw a corner or a safety off and take it to the house. So that might go against him here. But he's got a lot of stakes in that Kansas City-Cincinnati game. In terms of what's on the bench, Michael doesn't have many options just based on injuries. Trey Mason's back to being like the second back in St. Well, he's splitting carries, but you got to figure they're going to work Gurley in more. Coleman with a banged-up Breeze versus Dallas. You're not really sure there. Langford's not really getting time. Duke Johnson's not really been consistent. So, for the most part, he doesn't have many options just based on injuries. He's got to stay the same. Based on what I think is going to happen, I will go with the upset this week. I'll say Slap and Pickle gets the upset win, not lucky win. They get the upset win over Pocket Rocket. Yoggers a little hurt with the buys and the fact that Antonio Brown had Michael Vick thrown to him. That definitely moves his team down a little bit. If there was a week to strike, it's definitely this week. So I'm going to go Slap and Pickle. Goes to 2-2. Pocket Rocket loses their first game this week. Make it happen. Let's do this. Our second game this week pits two 2-1 teams against each other. The number 3 ranked team versus the number 5 ranked team. Both trending in different directions right now, with Todd on a 2-game win streak, Sap dropping his first game last week. In terms of NFL projections, they have Sap winning this one by about 20 points. With really Dalton's play probably being the difference over the last couple weeks. But let's look into these rosters and see what we got. The Hitmen have Cam Newton coming off a phenomenal game last week. You got to think that he has a chance to keep it up against that Tampa Bay defense. They haven't been that great. Danny Woodhead versus Cleveland. Woodhead's a guy that can always do a lot in the passing game depending on what the defense is throwing at him. But he's kind of become a hit-or-miss guy. But with John Stewart being probable and not really doing much, I can see why you throw Woodhead in your starting lineup and just see what you get out of him. And you got Chris Ivory, who's probable, has that Sunday 9:30 game in London. He didn't do anything last week. He got goose egg. But from all accounts, they're saying he's more healthy this week and will probably get back into his normal duties. It's not a bad play against the Dolphins defense. They're stout, but I think Ivory could make some things happen. Whew. His boy, the ageless wonder, Steve Smith. What could have been had that injury not had happened. He could have had another good week, but unfortunately that's not the way it went. He ends with 24 reception yards for 6.4. But he got the win, his first win of the season. So you kind of will hope that your wide receiver can get you more than 6.4, but at this point you got to live with it. That's what happens with injuries in the game. Amari Cooper, who has been awesome. Probably the best rookie so far this season. Coming off back-to-back 100-yard games. If Derek Carr can keep slinging the ball to him, he's going to be good, man. I mean, he looked like he was going to be the real deal when he came out, and he's proved everybody right thus far, and he could be the most productive rookie this season if he keeps it up. At tight end, you got Kobe Fleener, who, if there was a week to play Fleener, this might be it, because I think Dwayne Allen's probably out again. So those are two guys that really hurt each other in terms of production, playing the Jaguars. So if luck can get right, it might be this week. Lance Dunbar versus the Saints. Dunbar is a guy that if Brandon Whedon keeps doing what he did in the offense, you got to think that he could be pretty productive with all those receptions and receiving yards. He's pretty explosive once he gets it. He's basically doing the same thing that Danny Woodhead and guys like that, Darren Sproles, have been doing for the last couple of years. If he can fill that void for Dallas, he can be pretty money. Mason Crosby versus 49ers. I think the Packers are going to score a lot of points against that defense, so Crosby's probably a good play this week. The Panthers D versus Tampa Bay. The Panthers defense is, I don't think Luke Kuechly's coming back this week. I think he's still out. Yeah, he is not playing this week. It hadn't seemed to affect him too much. but they've gotten under 10 the last 2 weeks. I think the Tampa Bay offense is a little bit better than people give them credit for. Those receivers are pretty legit, and Jameis, yeah, he's not accurate, but he'll sling it, and the Buccaneers are not afraid to sling it, and they're trying to develop that chemistry with him, Mike Evans. But we'll see. It could be a really good play because Jameis has also kind of had a little bit of turnover bug his first couple games in the season. In terms of the bench for this week, you're already playing Lance Dunbar. You don't want to double down on Darren McFadden or take McFadden and put him in over Dunbar. Dunbar's been more productive. Jonathan Stewart's been probable and just hasn't been off to a good season. He's really affected by the fact that the Panthers' passing game is not feared. If Newton can put up a couple more games like he did last week, maybe that changes, gets Stewart a little bit more running room. Sean Jackson's out versus Philly. If he was in, I'd say you got to play him because the dude lives for playing the Eagles now. Hankerson could be a nice signing. I don't think you throw him in yet. That's pretty much it. I mean, if you think Alfred Blue could do it again against the Falcons, yeah, but there's going to be that split. Nelson Aguilar still hasn't done anything. So I think you stay pat with what you got. Now looking at turn down for what? Trying to ride Andy Dalton's ridiculous season so far. He's got him in against Kansas City. If Andy Dalton can keep up what he's doing, great play. We'll see. Andy Dalton's kind of like the barometer for checking how good quarterbacks are in the league. And you don't want to be that barometer. You want to be above it or below it. If he keeps playing this way, he won't be that barometer anymore. You got Melvin Gordon versus Cleveland. I like the way Gordon runs. I just don't know if he's going to do enough against Cleveland. TJ Yeldon versus Indy. Indy's at home. If Andrew Luck plays, this could be a bad go of it because the Jaguars might get down a lot if the Colts can find their stride, and that will just limit what Yeldon can do. Calvin Johnson versus Seattle. Not the best matchup, but the Seahawks secondary hasn't been as good in the past as they've been. I still think Johnson has problems, but you got to play him. He's Calvin Johnson. Like, you can't sit him unless you got guys like Julio Jones and Antonio Brown. But, I mean, no one has that. You got Jarvis Landry at the number 2 receiver versus the Jets. Jarvis has been averaging 8 receptions a game, so he's a guy I like a lot. I think you play him there. Tyler Eifert kind of got screwed last week with that touchdown call. You gotta think he'll be productive. Dalton seems to like him, and he's just a matchup nightmare for those linebackers and safeties. Rolling the dice with Percy Harvin. Think he's gonna keep it going through the last couple weeks. He's averaged over 10 points a game this season in terms of fantasy, so not the worst play. Robbie Gould versus Oakland. I don't know, man. The Bears got to get at least to the 40 for Gould to kick a field goal, and that's going to be tough with Jimmy Clausen at quarterback. No Alshon. You better hope Forte does a lot of legwork to get him in range. And the Jets D versus Miami. Tannehill's been struggling a lot lately, and the Jets know how to make some turnovers, so that could be a very good play. Be sure to wake up bright and early to watch the game across the pond this Sunday morning, guys. You got Chris Johnson on the bench after his breakout game last week. Chris Johnson always seems to do this. Ever since his CJ 2K days, he has one big game. Everyone gets all hyped and says he's back, and then he goes right back to getting 40 yards on 20 carries, and no one cares anymore. Drew Brees is probable. I think that's fine. You ride what Dalton's been doing right now. If Brees is not 100% healthy, no point in throwing him out there. Phillip Rivers could be a play against Cleveland. Alshon, I think, if they cleared out, even though he's listed as questionable on here. Yeah, maybe you get crazy. Throw Matt Jones out there as another option instead of Harvin. But for the most part, I think you're sticking with what you got. I will go with the Hitmen this week. Over turned down for what? To go 3-1 and be just behind Yager in the standings. Now let's see what we got for Game 3. Third matchup of the week. You got Always Late to Cromartie trying to get to 2-2 and knock the Sandusky's down to 2-2 and get everybody back into a level playing field like the first 4 weeks didn't even matter. So here we go. Unfortunately for Always Late to Cromartie, they had a very bad start to week 4 with Joe Flacco's performance. He gets the win, and you wish you could award some points for the win, but you can't. He ends the night with 189, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, and 1 fumble. Not what you want to see out of your starting quarterback. So needless to say, a new streak should start this week. But Jesus, could you imagine if Flacco's the highest scoring quarterback this week? That would be, you'd almost want the streak to start back up, right? Like, oh, God. Then you got DeMarco Murray at running back playing against the Redskins. Man, DeMarco, that is a tough sell right now, especially after Ryan Matthews actually gets 100 yards rushing last week after DeMarco could get nothing behind the offensive line. You got to wonder if that's going to bite into the carries he was getting. They already had to lose some confidence in him just on how he was running. And then for the backup to come in here and do as good as he did, it's got to create some doubt in the coach's mind. It's definitely created some doubt in the fans' mind. So we'll see how that works out for him. Marshawn Lynch is looking like he is not going to play. He didn't participate this week. And it looks like a game time decision on Monday night versus the Lions. You got to do what you got to do. If you got to bench Marshawn because of that Monday night start time, it might not be the worst thing in the world. Just get yourself a running back out there. And at that point, I really don't think you can beat yourself up with Marshawn. You bench him and he does something good. You can't really beat yourself up there. You had to do what you had to do. Jeremy Maclin's coming off a nice, reassuring performance. A lot of it came in garbage time, though, when the game was already kind of out of reach. But 141 in the TD, you got to play him. You got to hope that maybe this is the start of things to come. Demaryius Thomas must start. Even with Peyton Manning's demise approaching, he's still been very good this season. And there's no reason to think that this week's going to be any different against the Vikings. Greg Olsen is coming off a really good week last week. 134 and 2 TDs. He's going to remain the focal point. He's the best option they have in the passing game. Honestly, I feel like Greg Olsen is a must start, even if his stats aren't that great, because he's going to get the looks. Cam trusts him. He doesn't have Benjamin out there. You gotta throw to Olsen. Jordan Matthews has had a pretty solid start to the season, averaging double-digit fantasy points in our league against the Redskins secondary. Yeah, that's a good play there, I think. Hauschka versus the Lions defense. The Bills versus the Giants. The Bills are a very good defense, but they haven't been showing it in terms of fantasy stats. They had a pretty good game last week against Miami, putting up 17. You hope they can do the same thing against Eli Manning, who's definitely a guy that will throw some picks. Matt Stafford versus Seattle. Flacco put up 3, but Stafford could put up even less against Seattle's secondary, especially since Stafford's kind of a gunslinger, and that secondary is kind of vicious. Delaney Walker's on a bye. Darren Sproles is a gamble every week. Andre Ellison's probably not playing this week. Bishi Sankey's on a bye, and it looked like he might have lost his job last week. Carlos Williams is probably getting the start. He could be a sneaky play instead of Marshawn. Jameson Crowder, a lot of people are thinking he could have a breakout game this week based on nothing but speculation. So we can see. I mean, there's a couple options in here you could throw out there, but they're kind of gambles. I think Carlos Williams is probably the only one that you look at, and really you gotta wait and see what you hear about Marshawn. That's basically, you gotta see what you hear about Marshawn over the next day or two. For the Sandusky's, you have got, would it be comeback player, breakout player? What would it even be for Tyrod Taylor? Because this dude, he's done more than what everyone thought, man. Like, everyone thought that he would just be some game manager and he would have an awful, he'd have an okay season. But, I mean, 277 and 3 TDs last week versus Miami. That is efficiency. He had 3 picks versus New England, but I mean, I think that's more scheme and the fact they were just kind of forced to throw because New England was just punishing them. But he's averaged about 23 a game so far, and that, I mean, there's a reason that a couple of us in the league are gonna buy his jersey. The dude's just been that good through 3 weeks. If he can keep it up, man, that might be a sneaky good draft pick. You got Jamal Charles, must start every week. Lamar Miller, gosh, he's just been a big old disappointment. That's been the whole Miami offense, a big disappointment this season. He's getting you just over double digits because he does enough in the passing game, but you'd like to see a little bit more. Maybe next week has a breakout game because I don't see a breakout game versus the Jets in London. Michael Crabtree, he's developed somewhat of a rapport out there with Derek Carr. He's definitely a pretty good number 2 receiver. He's targeted 9 times last week. He gets the targets. He's usually about second on targets in the team. That's a good stat to have. If he can convert some more of those targets, he could be a very good play, especially against a very weak defensive Chicago team. Randall Cobb's a must start, especially against the San Francisco 49ers defense. Larry Donnell versus Buffalo. Larry Donnell is a guy that causes matchup problems. He just has problems with other parts of his game in terms of blocking and things like that. You wish that he could get more time on the field. Terrence Williams versus the Saints. You can't do worse than what he did last week, right? 2 targets, he dropped a pass at the end, no points. You got to think Whedon's going to get a little bit more comfortable and maybe throw the outside a little bit more. Walsh versus the Broncos at kicker, and then the Broncos defense versus Minnesota, which is a defense I really like this week. I think that could be the best defensive play of the week, in my opinion. In terms of the bench, not much I really see going on here. I mean, Andre Johnson's probably not going to play. Charles Benjamin, I don't think you can start him. Jai. Nah, I think you roll with that. Yes, I Tyrod over Bradford. Bradford hasn't looked great. The Redskins' defense is a good matchup on paper, but I like Tyrod a lot. We'll see what he can do. In terms of projections this week, I'm going to go with the Sandusky's to win, mainly based on the fact that I'm looking at Flacco's 3.4 right now, and I don't know if you can get that done with a quarterback. Somebody have to step up huge on his team. And I don't know, a couple injuries at running back, and it's looking a little tough this week, but I got to go with the Sandusky's. NFL.com had the Sandusky's winning by a narrow margin of 6 points, so they have it as a toss-up. I'll take the Sandusky's this week. Here we go with game number 4. We've got Publix Crab Special trying to go to 3-1, the number 2 team based on the overall power rankings for this week, versus Donde Está la Biblioteca, who tries to get to 2-2, who's number 6 in the power rankings this week. In terms of NFL projections, we've got Publix with a slight edge at 152 to 146. Justin Forsett gave Publix a great start to the week with 150 yards rushing, which is more than his total for the first 3 weeks. You got to be encouraged to see that from Justin Forsett. The dude was a pretty good back last year, and this is an encouraging sign for him moving forward. At quarterback, you got Derek Carr versus that pathetic Bears defense, who was just selling people left and right. They got rid of Bostic, they got rid of Jared Allen. The defense, it's not good when a franchise is selling the best players, just getting rid of everybody. It looks like the Bears have already given up. And if that's the case, the players are going to give up. And the Raiders are probably going to go to 3-1. Derek Carr is probably going to have another nice game. And I bet, I'm not going to guarantee, but I would stake some money that Amari Cooper has another 100-yard game against that Bears secondary. If you guys want to do a little side action, I'll maybe throw $5 in on it. You guys can get at me at the email thread, and we'll see what's going on with that. Frank Gore versus the Jags. Frank Gore came back and gave the Colts running game an added bonus, a breath of life, if you will, against their opponent last week, and you hope he can keep it going against Jacksonville. Vincent Jackson, while he didn't get as much love last week as Mike Evans. He's a good target. He's a good receiver. And you got to think that Jameis going to look to him a bunch. Just nice play. James Jones just keeps moving up the Packers depth chart, man. If you would have told me that James Jones would be the number 2 receiver and he would have been playing this good when they signed him, I wouldn't have believed you. He had 139 and a touchdown last week. He's playing the 49ers, which is another good matchup for the Packers. Very good play, especially with Devontae sitting. Jimmy Graham finally had a good game last week, 83 and a TD. You want to see more of that if you're the Jimmy Graham owner. You think you're going to work him more to the offense. You don't trade away what they did to get him and don't work him into the offense. Might just took some time for him to get some chemistry with Russell. Mark Ingram versus the Cowboys. With Mark Ingram, he can get it done. He's been doing a little bit more in the pass game this season. I think the Cowboys are going to start faltering. Brandon Weeden, the quarterback. The Saints could get a nice lead and just pound Ingram in to run the clock out. Could be a very good move for him. Dan Bailey versus the Saints. I don't know how many points the Cowboys are going to score, but the defense of the Saints sucks, so that could be a good play. The Ravens D put up an admirable 10.9, getting 4 sacks on the night against old Michael Vick. In terms of the bench, Colin Kaepernick, gosh, he is just imploded over the last couple weeks. He had a great game against Pittsburgh, but it seems like everybody has a great game against Pittsburgh. And then Arizona just slacked him. 2 pick sixes, 4 picks on the day. That's not a good game. Not much I see on the bench in terms of plays. If Lynch doesn't come in and play, you can maybe play Rawls there. If you want to maybe roll the dice on a flex play. Now let's look at Donde Estela Biblioteca's roster for the week. Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers. Matt Forte, another duh. I mean, you start those 2 guys every week. Doug Martin versus Carolina. He's questionable. He looked better running at the beginning of the season. He's kind of faltering. Might not be a bad matchup, though, against Carolina without Luke Kuechly. You play Emmanuel Sanders because Peyton Manning still finds ways to give him the ball. Larry Fitzgerald versus the Rams. You can't bench Fitzgerald after what he's done the last 2 weeks. You got to keep going with him. Max Williams did not pay off the way that he was hoping this week. Got 3.7, 17 receiving yards. Amir Abdullah versus the Seahawks. That could work out well. The fact that the Lions maybe not be able to take it downfield, do a bunch of dump-off passes to Abdullah, that could work out well. Matt Bryant versus Houston. Matt Bryant's a solid dude. He gets you around the same points every week, unless the Falcons are getting just waxed. So about 7 points from kicker. That's solid. The Steelers defense with 15. That was a good performance by the Steelers. In a loss, they really should have won that game. 5 sacks, 1 pick, and a fumble. They really took it to Joe Flacco. In terms of the bench, Julius Thomas is still out. This might be his last week being out. You can maybe throw him in there at the tight end position. Antonio Gates comes back after next week, so the tight end position gets bolstered a lot after this week. Ben Roethlisberger's inactive. It looked encouraging that he was walking around without a boot. That's a good sign for him. He might be back sooner than expected. Devonta Freeman, if you think he can do it, even though he's probable this week against the Texans after what he did last week, I feel like you got to play him if that's what you feel. Devonta Freeman's the only guy I could see maybe throwing in there over Doug Martin or maybe Abdullah. But we'll see how it goes. In terms of projections this week, give me Donde. Give me Donde Está la Biblioteca with Aaron Rodgers, Matt Forte. We'll see if he can get done with the rest of them. I don't think Fitzgerald keeps up what he's doing against the Rams. I think he has another solid day. So I'll take Donde Está la Biblioteca to move to 2-2. Public scratch special to fall on 2-2. And like I said, everyone's just going to be right back in the pile together. And this is going to be like none of these weeks even happened. And now, finally, we get to our last game of the week with our 9-10 team. And according to the magazine preview and NFL.com projections, these teams were supposed to be on Pocket Rocket's heels. These teams were supposed to be there, challenging for the title this season, and they simply are not getting it done so far. In terms of NFL projections, they predict About That Action to win 191 to 153, a solid 38-point cushion in terms of projections. And Le'Veon Bell got that started off well on Thursday night. Overtime helped him get over 100. At into regulation, he was at 94. So he gets 129, a touchdown, and 20 receiving yards to go to 36.6, a very solid start. That's what Le'Veon should do. He's the top running back in fantasy right now. I mean, it's up for argument, but I say Le'Veon's top guy week in, week out. Matt Ryan, if he keeps throwing the ball to Julio Jones, he can keep putting up points. That should be, throwing to Julio Jones, that should be 20 a game for Matt Ryan. Eddie Lacy looked decent with his sprained ankle. Looks like he's coming back. He's probable for the game. If he'll take over more in terms of running this week, it'll be another good play against San Francisco's defense. The Packers might get up early and just start running Lacy to drive the game out. AJ Green had a monster game last week. You hope that Dalton keeps looking his way versus the Chiefs. Mike Evans versus the Panthers. Evans had 17 targets last week. 17! That's insane. That's a lot of targets. Granted, he didn't get all of them, but Jameis a little off on his throws. You got to hope that over time, Evans and Winston develop a lot better chemistry. That's what the Buccaneers are hoping if they want to be a winning team. Martellus Bennett versus the Raiders. Martellus Bennett is a guy that could go big, and you got to hope that with Alshon Jeffrey out, Jimmy Clausen getting another weekend, that maybe Martellus Bennett can get the bulk of the work. But that's what you thought last week in Seattle. Didn't happen. Brandon Marshall, man, is getting it done. Say what you want about that lateral, but that man has put up 25 points or more the last 2 weeks. That's really, really good. You got to play B. Marsh against the Dolphins, a former team of his. Chandler Catanzaro has been a good play the last couple weeks. The Cardinals have been going off. He hasn't really been kicking too many field goals, but a lot of extra points so far. And the Dolphins D versus the Jets. Simply put, there's no other defense out there I want to play this week, so I'm going to stick with the Dolphins. On the bench, there's a bunch of options. No one that I really deem replaceable right now. You could argue Joseph Randle, maybe C.V. Johnson, Ryan Matthews after what he did. All these guys are pretty much just placeholders, trade bait, you know. Tevin Coleman's out. My man Dorial Green Beckham's on a bye, but he's had back-to-back touchdowns. I want to remind you guys, back-to-back TDs from my man DGB. Severian Jenkins is doubtful. Hoping for his return. Tight ends are looking a little... For a team that's so many tight ends, looking pretty thin at tight end. It's not good. Now on to the opponent this week. PY can't handle me. Jake is looking to rebound after this dreadful 0-3 start. No one expected this coming into the season. And even looking at the roster now, I wouldn't expect it coming into the season. This is a solid roster based on names. But you can't win fantasy games based on names. And the team hasn't... It's not like he's... It's not like he hasn't scored many points. Like it's just kind of weird how things have worked out so far this season for him. You got Russell Wilson versus the Lions on Monday Night Football. Russell Wilson's a pretty solid fantasy play most of the time. He's got 14 last week. He had 20 the week before. So, solid guy. I think you throw Russell Wilson out there. C.J. Anderson, just got to hope he can rebound. Really is what's going on here. The Vikings might be the team he can turn it around on. He's not gotten over 30 yards rushing in a game yet. Scored 12 his first week. He's not gotten more than 7.5 after that. Latavius Murray has been a really good running back so far this season. He's got a really good matchup in terms of Chicago. So I like Latavius versus Chicago. T.Y. Hilton's probable. He's only getting more healthy versus the bad Jacksonville team. He had 94 against Tennessee last week, so that's nice. It's nice. T.Y.'s getting back healthy. That'll be a good play. You start Odell Beckham. Dude's a beast. Zach Ertz he's had a rough season so far, but that whole Eagles offense has had a rough start so far. You hope that they can eventually get it going the right way. Keenan Allen versus the Browns. Keenan Allen, jeez, based on what he's been doing, he'll go to 24 yards next week. 166 in week 1, 16 in week 2, and 133 in week 3. So he'll get 18 in week 4 against the Browns. Justin Tucker put up a solid 15 and the game-winning field goal in overtime. I wish there was a way to give more points for game-winning field goals like that, like at the end of time, into regulation. I'd put some clutch guys like Justin Tucker a little bit more valuable in terms of kickers in the league. And the Cardinals' defense versus the Rams, I hope the Cardinals don't do what they did last week. Because if the Cardinals do what they did last week, I got no chance in hell, even with Le'Veon doing 36. In terms of the bench, Kyle Rudolph, Ladarius Green, some solid guys. I don't think you could put either one of them over Ertz if you wanted to. Eric Ebron's been solid. Mariota's on a bye. You gotta wait to see a little bit more out of Todd Gurley. He didn't get too much of a chance last week, but eventually they're gonna incorporate more into the offense. He was a number 10 pick. I think for the most part, staying pat in terms of roster. I think this is going to be a close game, way closer than I would like it to be. I think whoever is leading going into Monday Night Football will probably be sweating a little bit. It'll probably be me leading since I have no one playing Monday night and he has Russell Wilson. So I will go me. I hate to do it. I'll go me, getting the win, sending Jake to 0-4. And there you go, guys. That's my thoughts on Week 4 so far. And before I get out of here, do my last little sign off and last little tidbits. Gotta get my pick'ems last week. I was 2 of 3. A little bit worse than I expected. I had PY over Camardi and Pocket Rocket over Donde. Other than that, I got it wrong. Had myself losing to Turn Down for What. I had the Hitman losing to Slap and Pickle, and I had Publix losing to Sandusky's. Yep, lost. And props to the Hitmen for being so confident that they started Deshaun Jackson, knowing he wouldn't play and still picking up the W. So kudos to you, sir. Way to do it. Nice little tidbits from around the league. I saw this last week, and I don't know if you guys see this. It's on one of the pages on our league site, but these are some nice little facts about last week's action. Publix Grad Special won without a starting top 15 scoring quarterback. So, nice little dodge a bullet there. It pokes a little bit of fun at Donde's Biblioteca about not starting Devonta Freeman. But really, you had no knowledge of thinking that would happen. Yager was projected to win by the widest margin in the league last week, and they topped it by a 68.94 win. They have a little thing about players being drafted in the first round. Players drafted in the first round averaged 16.3. Second round players averaged 12.4. And second round players were actually slightly outperformed by third round players this week. Teams have won 100% of the time this season when starting the league's top scoring tight end. Pocket Rocket scored 224 this week, which is the highest mark in the league for the season. And Always Late to Cromartie beat the projections by a higher percentage than anyone else. They put up 199 when they were projected to do 145. So that's a little tidbits from around the league, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Best of luck to everybody going into this week. And don't forget, Sunday brunch. Dolphins, Jets, Brandon Marshall taking over London. No laterals. Get it done. Hashtag Buffalo back to VA.